Okay, let's talk about these are you refer to
Okay.
these as your chops, huh?
Yeah, this is a lot of times when you're teaching somebody starting out on the drums, you know, they'll have one hand that they favor. A lot of drummers are like what you call a right-handed drummer. They can execute certain things with their right hand that they can't with their left hand. I mean, that's just normal people are like
Sure.
that. Okay, so if a guy's practicing and all of a sudden he's doing like something on the drum, you know, and he notices that he doesn't have the dexterity or the power in his left hand, which is usually the case, he has to work harder with his left hand. So what I did was I made these sticks out of plastic tubes, and then I inserted the wooden tips here and glued them in. And this is a threaded, just like a threaded post, you know, or a rod that you get at the hardware store. And what I'm going to do eventually is, these are brand new, I just put them together. I'm going to increment this so that you can put that rod in almost any position, you know, you want to, by simply having a long screwdriver and coming in here and turning this threaded metal part so that, you know, you can get the weight all the way forward like that if you like, or you can get it in the middle or all the way down at the end like that. So just for the sake of conversation and to show you the difference, if I were to give these sticks to you right now and I asked you to do a simple thing like a mammy-daddy roll, which, you know, a roll, when you first learn to roll, they have you go, this is real old stuff, but they go like mammy-daddy, 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 like that. So, okay, now you're hearing that because it isn't tightened in the position. You're hearing that click, you know. Okay, so now I'm going to weight them equally, the same weight, and when you play, you get that residual little tap, you know. And those are pretty heavy as opposed to without the weights in them, you know. And like if I was going to just practice with normal wooden sticks, these are kind of practice sticks. See how fat they are and how, you know, how big this body is and how big the bead is and everything.
Why that design? I never
For
stopped to
this?
think about,
Well, the theory is that if I can play, if I can execute certain things with these, like this is a paradiddle, for instance. Okay, if I can do that with these, when I have lighter sticks on the job, you should be able to have more endurance in because it's a lot lighter stick. This thing will give you quite a workout. That's a pretty heavy stick.
Right.
And
But it's not straight. I mean, it has
yeah.
this baseball kind of look.
Well, these shoulders are, like I say,
Baseball
this
kind
isn't.
of-
I have some other sticks over here that are more normal looking sticks, more normal looking drumsticks. You know, I mean, these are, like I said, these are deliberately made heavy to build up your chops, so to speak. You know.
Well, are there any sticks that are straight, that are like this, you know?
Yeah, timbali sticks are straight, but they don't have a bead on the end. I don't have any timbali sticks here, but
This is the bead.
yeah, it would look like
shape.
that, but much thinner. You know.
Okay.
I've even seen rock and roll sticks with no bead on the end. They're made like this, and that's for endurance and
Is that
power.
what it is?
Yeah, because you know, if you're playing real loud and real hard, if you got a stick even like this, eventually you'll break the bead off because it's not designed for that. You know, it's.
Yeah, I noticed the size of the bead changes. Like this one is larger than this one. So
Sure.
what does this bead?
Well, it gives a different sound. If you have a real tiny bead, it's a real pinging kind of a sound, especially if you're playing on a cymbal. And if it's a broader, bigger bead, then it gives like kind of a lower, harder sound, you know. And sometimes I take the beads off the stick totally. If I'm playing for a singer and it's a real delicate situation,
Can you
know.
take this off?
No, I mean I literally
just grab the
sand
stick
them
that
off.
did-
Yeah,
okay.
I have some over here
Uh-huh.
that I wait, if I can reach these, I'll get them. Here's a bunch of sticks just stuck in some holes here. Okay. This is another stick that's identical to one of these. One of these sticks has no bead on it. Here's one with no bead on it right there. See?
Okay.
Now that'll give you a real high pinging kind of a delicate sound.
Can we do that? Can we hear that on that drum over there?
Yeah, sure. Okay. It's more noticeable on the cymbal than it is on the drum head.
Oh.
But I can do this anyway. Just drag this over here. Now, this is just an ordinary tom-tom, but it has a device that I made that's inside that gives it a whole different range.
Right.
Okay, now this is a stick without a bead, and it's very delicate. So if I hit that, now if I hit it with a stick with a bigger bead, it has a little broader sound. And if you play up near the rim, I think you can hear better if I incorporate my device now. Okay. You know, you get all those sounds around the perimeter of the drum. Then the center part actually rings. You know, that's like a rim shot on the edge of it, you know. So you can play, here I'll get two sticks here. Okay, you can play things like, you know, all those different sounds. Then you can get the low sound. That's, you know, okay, so when you incorporate all these different things, like I said, the bead is really going to give you more of a different sound on a cymbal. On a drum, it's pretty hard to detect whether it's broad or a pinging sound, or, you know, light or heavy.
Okay. Just, you want, for a minute, John, did we?
Ever notice Alan Ladd never puts a hat on straight?
That's
It's always
true.
the
It's always
brim's
a bit-
pointing towards the sky, because he's only 3 feet high.
It was, yeah, right there.
He kisses Johnny Russell and turns around and walks under a wagon.
Okay, well,
Well, it's true.
Yeah, I know. Well, did they have all the women walking in a trench or something for the
Right.
low stick?
Yeah,
He was on
yeah.
a box.
Stand on boxes.
Very good guy, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
okay.
Well, let's go, because,
All right.
you know, there's so many things.
Okay, could you say,
This is-
oh, okay, okay.
Okay, now.
You
this
wanted
is
to know
mine.
something about this
Yeah,
drum?
you explained it to me earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is an ordinary 14 by 14, what they would call in a drum book, if you were buying one, this is a floor tom, because it sits on the floor, generally to your right, you know, if you're a right-handed drummer. And it would sound like this. Just a regular floor tom. It's kind of low. I've taken the bottom head off and the lugs, because I wanted this to be free in here so that this cable wouldn't rub on anything. And I put a bowl inside that's kind of like, for the sake of conversation, it's like a little timpani bowl. But the little bowl has no drum head on it of its own. It simply comes up, and the existing head here becomes the head of this little bowl that comes up. So I'll play a little bit on it, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, now, this is what it sounds like if you don't push the pedal down. And then when you do push the pedal down, and that's inside the bowl, you get a ring, you know. And on the outside, you get kind of a dead sound. So you can go. Solo or something, it just gives you another color. And like I promised, you know, you were kind of worried when we were talking earlier. You said, well, I don't want you to take your thing apart because it might be, you know, a big deal. So I'm just going to simply remove this head, and you'll see what the device looks like inside. And there's this has been recorded on different albums. I have it recorded with a Joe Pass album I did live at Monty. And I thought it recorded very well. It came out real nice. And also, this is the very first drum I ever did it to. This is a pretty old drum. But I did some custom drums for Shelly Manne. I made one for Shelly Manne. I made one for a percussionist named Emil Richards. And another drummer named Donald Bailey, who has played a lot for Carmen McRae. You know, I did, let's see, 3 drums, yeah.
So other than these three drums, these guys, I mean, this is, people are, I'm not aware of this device. Or
No, but you know what? In a way, when it's recorded, it almost sounds like, excuse me, it almost sounds like I'm getting this kind of a sound electronically, and I'm not. It's all manual stuff, you know. And I like that because it's still acoustic, and you know, it's advantageous because you don't have to have an amplifier, and it picks up pretty good. It'll carry across the room pretty good. When I lift this head off of here in a few seconds, you'll see, I don't know if the camera angle can get inside the drum. I could tilt it your way, but you'll see what the thing looks like. It's very simply made, and I don't know if I'm saying the right word. What's the name of those tie-down chords that you stretch? Gunji chords? Do they call them gunji chords or something like that?
Gosh, I don't know.
You know, you'll see one. You'll see one in here. I use one in here because I stayed away from springs and anything metal because they always seem to have a tendency to vibrate, or you get a lot of residual sounds that you don't want. Okay, so here, now the head's off. Now see how simply that's put in there?
Right,
Okay.
this is like a little.
This is like those.
Pot?
This is those chords you buy, you know, when you want to tie books down on your bike, and you know. And so, see, that doesn't make any noise at all, you know. And then these are just hooks, and it's run through there. And I have this. Shall I tilt it towards you so you can see the inside, like that? Okay. And this is just a harness made out of wood in here. And when I press this pedal down, it works like a cam, and it makes that come up like that. See?
And
the
drum head becomes
yeah.
like that.
And when it's in a position of just normal, this doesn't touch the drum head, so you don't get any kind of residual buzzing or anything. So whenever you push that down, see how that comes up, and then it returns because this is all elastic in here. And that's how it works. So now the existing drum head becomes the drum head of this little bowl when it comes up. And that's how that works.
That's fascinating. So you just decided one day that you were going to make something that gave you that sound, right?
Yeah, and drummers would come out of the audience, like after the set, if there were drummers in the audience, they'd go, wow, how'd you do that, man? Is that like one of those mezzi tom-toms? There was a company in Italy that...
Mezzi?
Yeah, called Mezzi, that made a tom-tom that had a pedal on it, but the whole surface of the top became tight and loose, so it didn't have the same kind of register as this. This will get real high because look how it goes from this big deep drum to this little small drum here, and so it gives you a higher register. And plus you have the perimeter of that, you know. So it has some nice features to it.
This is very innovative.
So drummers would come out of the audience and say, hey man, how'd you do that, you know? And then I'd show them the drum, and I'm never queasy about showing anything. I'll show it to a guy because you never know, you know, people, they could give you more ideas too and say, hey, well, you know, there's a thing that you can get that you know, I never know. So, but this is something I came up with, and it's been successful for me. And I guess it was liked well enough that Shelley wanted me to make one for him, and Donald and Emil. So that's the only three in existence that I know of.
It's interesting. What, now, of course, you're constantly thinking, it seems, on how to improve upon what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
I would think, not just with the drums, but with everything, seemingly.
Well, in this past year, I've noticed that I got into a certain physical situation, health-wise, where, you know, I'm on a dialysis machine, so, and sometimes it really weakens you, and I noticed that carrying my drums to the job and setting them up and all that was getting to be really exhausting. So I decided to make a mini set of drums, which I'll be happy to show you later if you'd like to see. And what I did, I just took a normal set of Gretsch drums and I sawed some of the tom-toms in half, and I have a real small piccolo snare drum. And this drum, this actual size drum, this 14 by 14, became my bass drum, which normally a bass drum is about 20 inches high. They even have them as high as 26. You know, those old-fashioned bands you see with that real big bass drum with the palm trees on it. That's about 26-inch high drum. And so now most guys use 22, you know, 24, you know, stuff like that.
palm trees.
The palm tree and the light in it and all that. That's what
What
they have.
about, okay, now, how many drums is the average drummer dealing with, or jazz drummer?
Well,
When
you know,
he plays,
each
what's he, yeah.
each company has a catalog that they send all the music stores.
Mm.
So if you were to just open it up, of course, the first thing you would see are these, you know, they always want to, those big elaborate rock sets with the big cascade of tom-toms going all the way across, you know. And maybe the heads are silver and the center of them has a black dot. You've seen those, haven't you?
Sure.
Okay. And huge cymbal stands that look like mic boom stands with cymbals and a big array of cymbals and everything. Okay, that's a pretty elaborate set. So
Yeah.
I would
I think
think
that's
that,
more for showmanship. And,
yeah,
you know,
it's
you
like,
get a rock band on a huge stage and 2,000 people screaming, and you
Yeah.
have to have something large to come across, right?
yeah, and not only that, it's part and parcel of the music that they're doing. It's, you know.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I'm saying it would be, excuse me, it would be difficult for a jazz drummer with a real small set to get that kind of a sound in a rock band. It just wouldn't happen. I mean, he has to have that kind of equipment, has to be tuned a certain way, you know. And have you ever noticed how heavy the stands are? I mean, everything is made for endurance because the guy's playing pretty loud and hard and heavy,
Right.
and he has to have equipment that can stand up to that. Now, when you're playing in a different situation, like for a vocalist or, you know, it's in a small club situation, you don't need stuff like that. Although there are people that are very talented that can play equipment like that at a lower level and bring the whole thing down, but they still have all that massive stuff. I think that a normal jazz set, like say somebody that's backing up maybe Carmen McRae or Ella Fitzgerald or a jazz singer.
Who you did for years, but
Yeah.
back Carmen for years.
Yeah, well, you just have a bass drum, you have a tom-tom up here, and maybe a floor tom, a hi-hat, and a couple of ride cymbals, and
Did you ever use one of a snare?
snare drum. Yeah, you have 4 basic drums: the snare, the tom-tom that goes on your bass drum, the bass drum, and the floor tom, which is one of these, and then a hi-hat, which is the 2 cymbals that come together, and then 2 ride cymbals for different color. Maybe one has rivets in it, one's clear, or, you know, it's a very personal thing. And then you might have a box of things that you could use, like bells or claves or some for different colors that you might, percussive instruments.
Right.
And that's about it, you know. But if you looked at the Rolling Stones setup or any of those, you know, groups that use a lot of stuff, I mean, you'll see the difference right away. The guy might have 11, 15 drums up there, you know. So, you know, the music calls for it because, like you said, it's part of the whole thing, you know, the show and everything about it, you know. But years ago, Louis Bellson said all about performing in front of 4,000 or 5,000 people or anything like that. The only thing that I'm really ever concerned with is the quality and the validity of what I'm doing. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I don't want to see something sometime later and go, God, did I do that? Oh man, stupid, you know.
You always want to be
Yeah.
the best.
I always want to, well, I always want to
Okay,
bring
that's
something.
an interesting point. Do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
Not in that regard so much as I like to join, I like to become a part of the music rather than, you know, like we were saying a little while ago, you know, there's 2 kids, you know, one's playing violin, one's playing the drums, and maybe the one that plays the drums is looked upon as being like the more show-offy one. He's playing the drums. I mean, that's a real flashy thing, you know, but yet, you know, the violin player is creating this certain kind of music, and I like to think that what I'm bringing to the drums is a certain kind of music that corresponds and blends in with the people that I'm playing with, that I can bring something there that adds to what it is rather than something that's, you know,
Absolutely.
flashy or,
Right.
you know, showmanship, twirl
You're
the
not in it
sticks.
for
And,
yourself. You're
Yeah.
there to really blend and make music.
well, you become a part of it. It's like you submit yourself to this thing. And as you're playing the drums, you're almost sitting back and watching all this stuff happen, and you're enjoying it. as much as a person who isn't playing the drums. They're hearing the music out of it, and
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You become right in the center of all of this, and it's like I had an experience one time. I was playing for Mel Torme at Coconut Grove, which they changed the name. They call it the Now Grove, and I was so excited because he called me to play with him with the Count Basie Orchestra, you know, and I had never done anything like that before. And I got up there and I started playing, and like I thought I was going to pass out. I thought, I don't believe I'm here doing this, you know. Can I really do this, you know? And that band plays itself. You know what I'm saying? It's like getting on a train or something. I mean, you know, I can't get on a train and do body language and make the train go somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like playing with that.
You felt like you were on a train.
I was just on this thing, and it was just so wonderful and so positive. And the way all the horn players play on that band, you know, they have a way of controlling the time, and everything's just this wonderful thing that you become a part of, and you just play, and it's a fantastic feeling, you know. Sometimes if you play with musicians that feel the time different than you do, or they're in another place musically or something, it might be a simple job, even a casual or anything, and every beat seems labor, you know, like laborsome and weighty, and like, oh, I hope everything comes out all right, because it's all disconnected.
Yes.
And then you play with something like the Basie band, and it's so together that you just, it's like putting cheese in hot soup. It just, you know, you can't tell the cheese from the soup after a while. You know, it's right in there. It's part of it, you know. And that's how I felt in that experience.
That's why Basie's band is Basie's band.
That's why Basie's
That's why
band
it's great.
That's right.
Everybody in it is great.
It has that, that's right. It just seems to...
They're there to make music.
You just seem to get absorbed in this thing. And I think that's, you know, when you talk to people that are in love or something, and they say, you know, it's something about the chemistry of being with this person. I think that's really true with musicians. There's certain chemistry. A guy comes from somewhere back east or Florida or something. I've never seen him in my life before, and somehow we get thrown together in this situation, and we have to make music, and maybe there are no arrangements, no charts, you know, that's, you know, and all of a sudden you start playing, and by the second or third measure, it's just like, if somebody heard you play, some people come out of the audience and go, God, you guys sound great, how long have you been together? And if you really tell them the truth, you know, about 20 minutes, you know, they go, come on, you know. But it's true. And then sometimes the chemistry is so miserable that, you know, there's a certain professional thing that comes into view also, you know. But you can only do so much, you know, and then you have to really play together to make the music sound right.
When it's good, it's like a romance. Or is it always a romance, at least between you and your instrument?
Yeah.
Really did.
And, you know, you can see a guy who's been playing 30 years or whatever, all of a sudden he starts playing with a guy, and you can see on his face and everything that he's genuinely enjoying it. Yeah, I mean, he's really having fun, and they're really creating a valid thing. I mean, it's beautiful. It's,
yeah, I agree.
You know, I've had that happen, and I should say, I've been very fortunate to have that happen with some really great players.
Well, I just wanted to say that, you know, your mom said that you started playing the drums. She recalls you started experimenting with the drums at 3 in front of the radio, and you would play along with the songs.
Well, I remember the canisters were red, and they were the kind that you keep flour and coffee and tea.
Oh, you took a couple of canisters. Is that thus the slang for drums, canisters?
No, that's just what my mother's canisters, you know.
It was available at the time, but I mean, isn't that a slang word for drums too? You got canisters or?
I never used that.
Oh, okay.
Traps. I said traps before. Maybe that's what you're. Yeah, instead of traps. Yeah, I used to think that was odd. Traps.
I think that's odd too. Canisters makes more sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want you to.
No, I just would simply, from what my mom tells me, I remember I was very young when I did it, but I don't remember that I was 3 or 4, but I guess that's so. She's my mom, she should know. Sure. But I had this urge I'd get the canisters, and I'd set them down in front of me, and like they're all different sizes because one was like a flower one, and the coffee one, and the tea one, and whatever else. And then I'd take two knives because knives seem to bounce real good. You know, you ever notice that people play with knives on the table? And so I'd play these different canisters, and I'd turn the radio on, and I played to whatever music was available. And my mom always had a nice collection of records. She had Chopin, a lot of piano pieces, polonaises and things. So I really had a real nice musical
So you were surrounded by
availability of nice music around. And also we lived in Philadelphia, and she'd take me to see Eugene Normandy and the Philadelphia Orchestra, and that was always very exciting, you know, to see a big orchestra play. And I remember, just like it was yesterday, I was always fascinated. They had a lot of parades in Philadelphia for different reasons, like the Mummers Parade. Have you ever heard about that? Where all these guys dress in feathers and they play banjos. Well, I was always really excited by that. I thought that was fantastic. And to see the drummers, hear the drummers coming from way off, and then, you know, all of a sudden they're right in front of you. It used to seem so, you know, exciting to me to hear all those guys playing drums. You know, I always loved the drums. And I love other instruments too, but I mean, there was something about the drums that I was just attracted to the drums. And I remember getting really excited hearing parade drummers and, you know, different kinds of drummers.
Why is it, can you define it? Why the drums? I mean, what's the feeling? Well, let's go. We'll start with the canisters. And obviously, you have an ear. You had a natural ear for what? For rhythm and I suppose melody. Is melody involved in the drums?
I think I'm a melodic drummer. I mean, when you hear me play a solo or something, I think you can almost tell that I'm playing the tune that I'm playing. That was something that used to bother me. Some drummers have a lot of technique, and when they take what would be commonly known in the household as a drum break, you know, you can call it trading fours. The saxophone player plays 4 bars, you play 4 bars, or he plays 8 bars, you play 8 bars. That's trading 8s or 4s. You know, some drummers are real musical, and the statement that they make musically coincides with maybe something that somebody suggested musically just before it. And then some drummers just have some rhythm stuff that they do, and they just kind of squeeze it in wherever they can, and it has to do with a lot of technique. Yeah, and it might be excellent, but somehow, you know, it's out of context to me when I listen to it with the music that's being made. You know, it's something that it's like a lick that they have down, so they go, oh, I can fit that in here, and they do it, and it's fine. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah, but they're limited, huh? They don't take it any further.
Yeah, I think that the music plays itself when you lend yourself to the idea that, well, like I told you, you know, you seem to just have everything fitting in, and it's wonderful. I mean, it's a great feeling when that happens.
Well, it's got to be, sure, and I think I've perceived it at times, you know, when I've watched you guys play and various other guys.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask you a question now. I want to slip in, and it came into my mind, and that is, you consider yourself a jazz musician, right? You've really always been a jazz musician.
Yeah, I think so.
Most of the jazz musicians that you know, that you play with, have they all had the ear to begin with? I mean, did they all start off at an early age with that natural ear for music, playing by ear? They didn't, or did they go out and learn how to play the instruments, you know, technically, and then want to get into jazz? Or do you notice, and if that's so, do you notice the difference between the musicians who started playing by ear, you know, and then took it from there or whatever, became better musicians, and those who went out and learned an instrument?
You know, I don't think that jazz is something that, or the feeling of jazz is something that you teach anybody. I think that somehow, you know, either you're in that frame of mind or you're not, you know. Like, for instance, some guys can read anything you put in front of them and play, you know. I mean, if it's on the horn, you know, they'll find it and play it, and it'll be right on, you know, right on the money. And then some players I've played with can't read music, and they play wonderful also. I mean, they are real creative and inventive, and they hear something once and they bang, they just play it, you know. And then there's guys that are real special that can read most anything and play great and have good ideas, and you know, so you have all these different various kinds of musicians. But in answer to your question, I think that somebody, I've had this happen so many times, I wish I had a dime for every time this has been said to me.
Really?
You know, we don't like jazz, but God, you guys are great. You know, and most people don't know jazz from, you know, they'll turn the radio on and they'll hear something, and if somebody tells them that's jazz, you know, well then that's the idea they have, that jazz is that, you know. Most people, if you say, I'm a jazz musician, you know, they say, oh man, you mean that stuff with those loud horns and all that? You know, some people actually think like that. And of course there's a lot of people who really know the difference, and of course they don't think like that. They know, you know, what they expect. But, I mean, Dixieland is jazz. I mean, if you want to really say, you know, jazz music, you know, Dixieland is jazz. All forms of jazz are jazz. Some of it progressive jazz, and like now they have fusion, you know, which is jazz and rock and different things all put together, you know, and it's all fused together. So I think that whether the person really knows it or not, they either have that ability to understand jazz and benefit from listening to it and feel a certain feeling from it, or they don't. I mean, you can play the record for two people. One guy doesn't get it at all. You know, he doesn't hate it or anything. He just goes, that doesn't do anything for me. Where's the melody? What's happening? How come they got to play a million notes like that? What's going on?
Why do you think that is? Because they sit and listen to rock and roll, at least teenagers will, or people in their early 20s, to a point. And then perhaps they become tired of rock. Well, they'll always listen to ballads type, or, you know, easy listening rock or whatever, pop rock. Well, why do you think that is? Why? It's almost as though they're stymied or something by this.
I think it has a lot to do with what people are exposed to. Now, for instance, I never understood when a rock group, any of the big rock groups, I won't mention any names, but I'm talking about household words now, you know. These people have thousands and thousands of kids at one time listening to their music, okay? They never took it upon themselves to say, you know, there are other things, you know, like today our guest is Yehudi Menuhin. I just want you to hear him play one song on the violin, you know what I mean? They don't seem to do that, you know. And yet, I think in jazz music, we borrow from classical, and you know, so many things are involved in jazz music. And we have,
complex?
well, I think if you heard a jazz group play, they have like a real tender ballad. Then they have an uptune where, you know, you're really aware of the virtuosity that goes into playing like that, you know. And you have all these different phases, and it's still jazz music. But if I were to just turn the radio on and hear certain kinds of rock music, there are many, many kinds of rock music, but it seems like the ones that they choose to play on the radio, if you were to just skip across a whole bunch of stations, they're all like the same temperament. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But if you go out and buy an artist's album, you'll hear that on that album he has a tender ballad. It could still be a rock band. He has a tender ballad. He has something, you know, up and rockets and loud, and, you know. So I think it has a lot to do with what people are exposed to.
And we've been exposed to that, which you were just talking about, that one kind of what do you want to call it, that basic drum beat.
It's like,
we've been lulled by it almost.
If you saw music, all of a sudden it wasn't music, it was turned into colors. They're like really focusing on one spectrum of the color wheel. And there's all these beautiful pastels and all these things that go into infinity this way, and all these dark, somber colors that go into, you know, the other way. And yet, you know, they're focusing on this kind of mid-range thing, like we don't want to step on any toes. Hey, that band made $27 million with that, so
We're playing in middle grade.
right. So we're going to come out with another thing that's kind of like that, and you know.
Right.
And so it's really not fair. It would be like eating hamburgers all the time, and you never knew about any other kind of food. I'm not even saying hamburgers are bad. I'm just
No, I
saying
understand.
why just do that, you know? So I think that while being a jazz musician, I guess I'm prejudiced, but jazz just seems to have a real huge variety of things that they do that
That's
keep
the
it
attraction?
interesting. Yeah, keeps it interesting to me.
I mean, yeah, right. As a musician, that's what the attraction is,
Yeah.
because you can expand and you can take it that step further. And would you rather do that really very far out improvisational jazz, as you know, where you just get to improvise, as
Well, you know,
opposed to mainstream kind of stuff?
That's a funny question. You know, for a musician, you can play all different kinds of music, and like, if you ever heard people say this, oh yeah, man, that's musician's music, you know? And so,
Sort of.
you know,
Not-
like some people think that rock and roll music is purely a physical music. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't, you know, they think like, well, that music's just for dancing, man. You're not supposed to listen to that. That's real physical, you know. And maybe part of that is true, you know. I think there are a lot of rock groups that are very musical. They play really beautiful things. But I'm saying, in answer to your question, I think that most people would prefer to hear something that they're comfortable with.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think I think they've been lulled by this this mediocre. You know, a lot of mediocre, you know, that bass, like I said before, basic drum beat. You know, but as a musician, you know, not all there's just an element of jazz musicians. I mean, okay. So what's the what's the draw? Why jazz?